The moment when you realize you've spent 5 years living with a sculpture instead of a human being, that moment steals your breath like no catastrophe ever could. And I felt it standing in the small hallway of our cramped trailer, carefully examining my wife's tablet, positioning it so the light wouldn't glare off the screen. My name is Leon. I'm an auto painter. My job is about impressions, the kind you leave on automobiles, and 35 years has given me the experience to understand when something was painted fairly, and when it was merely an appearance concealing something underneath, something hidden under layers of lacquer. She is Vanessa, a marketing specialist at one of Sacramento's larger corporations. We met 5 years ago in a small town where she wasn't just talkative, but absolutely captivating as she spoke about her dreams of the big city, about a career, about how she would transform her life. I found it charming, her ambitions. I thought we would transform our lives together, that our partnership was something real and unbreakable. Our move to Sacramento in February of last year was the realization of that dream, which quickly transformed into a nightmare. Big cities don't love poor people, and although we had savings, they were barely enough for a deposit and the necessary documents for a first apartment. A trailer owner named Ruben offered a reasonable price, almost half the usual rental rate in the city. We accepted, thinking it would be temporary. A stepping stone. Temporary became permanent the moment you realize you're living in 60 square meters with someone who doesn't announce their presence by volume, but somehow manages to occupy absolutely every inch of space. The psychological weight of those confined quarters was suffocating. Vanessa began to spend less and less time at home. She called them friends, though that term was only approximate. These were people with shared interests, mainly centered around escaping their current reality. One of these acquaintances, Caitlin, was celebrating her birthday at a restaurant called the Golden Oak in downtown Sacramento. Vanessa insisted I not attend, a typical girls' night thing, she said. I didn't object. I had a 4-layer paint job to finish on a BMW, and the commission was exceptional. That extra money could help us save faster for a real apartment. I threw myself into work. The trailer had become unbearable, the constant proximity, the thin walls where every sound traveled, the way Vanessa would spend hours getting ready before going out with her friends, only to return late with a distant look in her eyes. We were living together but living apart. This was supposed to be the sacrifice we made together, the temporary hardship before better times. Except Vanessa didn't seem to see it as temporary anymore. She seemed to embrace it, using it as an excuse to be away. The paint job on the BMW took 3 days. 3 days of careful attention to detail, of getting the color absolutely perfect, of losing myself in the work. When you're covered in paint dust and fumes, when your hands are stained permanently gray, it's easy to forget about everything else. Easy to forget about your marriage slowly dissolving in a trailer 3 miles away. I didn't think much about Vanessa's birthday celebration until 2 days later, when I returned from another job, a Mercedes with minor damage to its rear bumper. It was a quick repair, but it kept me at the shop until late evening. I stopped at a convenience store to grab some coffee and a sandwich before heading home. That's where I saw Caitlin. She was standing near the refrigerated section, looking somewhat anxious, as if she was waiting for someone or perhaps trying to decide something. When she saw me, her face changed. Not in a friendly way, in a way that suggested she had something heavy on her mind. "Leon," she said, walking toward me with a purpose that made my stomach tighten. "I wasn't expecting to see you here." "Just grabbing some food," I replied, wondering why she looked so uncomfortable. "How was the birthday celebration at the restaurant?" She hesitated. That hesitation was everything. In that brief pause, I knew something significant had happened, something that Caitlin felt obligated to share with me, yet dreaded doing so. "Can we talk?" she asked. "Maybe outside?" The parking lot was nearly empty. The Sacramento evening was cool for spring, the air carrying hints of the nearby river. Caitlin stood across from me, her arms crossed, clearly struggling with what she needed to say. "I don't know if I should tell you this," Caitlin began, "but I couldn't live with myself if I didn't. I respect you, Leon. You helped me when my car broke down last year, you didn't hesitate to assist me. I know Vanessa doesn't appreciate that you did it without asking for anything in return, but I do. So I'm going to tell you what happened." She described the evening. 5 women at a table, all single or at least appearing that way. They had drinks, they laughed, they tried to forget about their daily routines. And then a man approached their table. He was the director of the restaurant, Caitlin explained. His name was Rudolph Barton. He was charming, confident, and he seemed particularly interested in Vanessa. "He just kept talking to her," Caitlin said. "The rest of us were laughing, but he was focused on her. He brought her another drink without asking what she wanted. He seemed to know what she would like. And before the evening ended, they exchanged phone numbers. I felt something tighten in my chest. It was a small thing, just a phone number exchanged at a restaurant, probably meaningless. Probably. But my hands were clenched into fists. I wanted to tell you earlier, Caitlin continued, but I wasn't sure if I should. I didn't want to cause problems. But then I realized that if my husband was being approached by someone like that, I would want to know. So I'm telling you. Be careful, Leon. Not everyone who smiles at someone they want has good intentions. I thanked her. What else could I do? I didn't thank her for the information. I thanked her for being honest. And honesty was becoming a rare commodity in my life. That evening, when Vanessa came home, I was sitting at our small kitchen table, pretending to read something on my phone. She walked in with a certain energy that I recognized now as something beyond simple tiredness from a social outing. Her hair was slightly loose, her makeup was somewhat smudged at the corners of her mouth. She didn't kiss me hello as she usually did, even if just perfunctorily. How was the celebration? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Good, she replied, heading toward the bedroom. The restaurant was nice. The food was decent. Caitlin had a great time. She said nothing about the director. She said nothing about the phone number. She said nothing about the specific attention she received from someone named Rudolph. I let it go. Not because I believed her, I was already learning not to believe her, but because I needed time to understand what exactly was happening. Was I overreacting to something that Caitlin had misinterpreted? Was a simple exchange of contact information at a restaurant really worth the weight of suspicion it was creating in my mind? The next day I watched Vanessa more carefully. I didn't approach her or question her. I simply observed, as if I was studying a painting to understand its technique, looking for the brushstrokes that would reveal how it was made. That evening she came home later than usual. When I asked why, she said work had kept her occupied. When she took off her clothes to shower, I noticed something immediately. Her wedding ring was missing. It was a simple gold band, nothing expensive but meaningful because I had placed it on her finger 5 years earlier. We had promised each other something that day, made commitments that seemed absolute at the time. Where is your ring? I asked as casually as I could manage. What? Oh, my ring. She glanced at her hand as if seeing it for the first time. I was washing my hands at work and I took it off. I put it on the sink and when I came back to check, it was gone. Someone probably threw it away thinking it was trash. It was a plausible explanation. Completely believable. Except that the next day she came home without a ring again. And the day after that as well. I'm sorry about the ring, I told her, keeping the tone light. When we get back on our feet, I'll buy you a new one. Something even nicer. She smiled at me then. It wasn't a guilty smile. It was worse. It was an absent smile, like she was acknowledging words from someone in another room. She was present in body but not in spirit, and that absence was far more damaging than any overt act of deception could have been. I decided to investigate, though I hated myself for it. Investigating meant admitting that something was wrong. It meant acknowledging that the marriage I had built, the life I had planned, was built on a foundation I couldn't see. But I needed to know the truth. The next day, after Vanessa left for work and I had handled an early morning touch-up job at the shop, I returned home to the trailer. She had left her tablet on the kitchen counter, logged into her accounts. Vanessa was never particularly cautious about technology. She seemed to believe that her password was enough protection, that no one would dare look into her private messages. I was about to become one of those people who dared. The Messenger application was open. One conversation thread stood out immediately: Rudolph. Just the name filled me with a cold dread that I hadn't felt in years. The conversation began less than a week after the birthday celebration. It was casual at first. Rudolph thanking her for the evening, saying he enjoyed meeting her. Vanessa responding positively. Then gradually the messages became more frequent. Then they became more explicit. When can I see you again? Rudolph wrote. I'm not sure, Vanessa replied. It's complicated. Is it? Rudolph asked. How complicated can life really be? The messages continued, becoming progressively more intimate in tone and content. Rudolph was describing meetings, private time, moments that could only happen if Vanessa was lying to me about where she was spending her evenings. Then I found a message that made me sit down heavily. I'm 5 weeks pregnant. The world stopped moving for a moment. 5 weeks. 5 weeks before I found these messages meant that Vanessa had been with Rudolph from the very beginning of their acquaintance, and she had allowed him to put a child inside her while wearing a wedding ring that she kept removing at work. Rudolph's response was immediate: we need to talk about this. This wasn't part of the plan. Vanessa wrote back, I took care of it. Don't worry. You won't have any obligations. I felt sick. I felt betrayed. I felt angry in a way that seemed to transcend simple emotion and become something physical, something that demanded an outlet. But I forced myself to continue reading. The subsequent messages between them revealed a relationship that was purely transactional. Vanessa wasn't in love with Rudolph. She was using him as an escape from our life in the trailer. Rudolph wasn't in love with her. He simply wanted the physical intimacy without any emotional investment. He doesn't understand me, Vanessa wrote to Rudolph. He's a good person, but he's not ambitious. He's not going anywhere. He's content with working at that shop, painting cars like some kind of machine. I need more than that. Those words cut deeper than any actual affair could have. It wasn't just about the physical betrayal, it was about how she had already decided that I was beneath her, that my work, my efforts, my love were somehow insufficient for someone with her needs. I put the tablet down slowly, carefully, as if it was made of glass and would shatter if I wasn't gentle. But I already knew the glass had shattered. I was just staring at the pieces, trying to understand how it had gotten broken. The next step was impossible to avoid. I needed to know everything. I didn't know how to find information about Vanessa's previous relationships, not until I remembered that Luke, a friend from my hometown who now worked as a lawyer in Sacramento, was connected to many people. I called him that night, using the excuse of catching up, but quickly turning to what I really needed. Luke, I need a favor, I said carefully. Do you have contact information for a man named Thomas Hill? He was married to Vanessa before she married me. There was a pause on the other end. Why would you need that? Luke asked. I just do, I replied. Can you help me? Within a few hours, Luke called me back with a telegram contact. Thomas Hill. The first husband. The man before me. I sent him a simple message. Hi Thomas. I'm Leon. I'm married to Vanessa. I heard you two divorced. I need to know why. Please. The response came within hours and it was devastating. She cheated on me. Multiple times. I never proved it fully, so I just left. I couldn't be with someone like that. 8 words that changed everything. 5 years. I had spent 5 years sharing a bed, an apartment, and future plans with a woman who had done exactly this before. She hadn't just cheated once, she had a pattern. She had a history of infidelity that predated our entire relationship. I called in sick to work the next day. I couldn't think about painting cars. I could barely think about anything except the fact that my life, which I had believed was moving forward, had actually been moving in circles. I was repeating a pattern that someone else had already experienced and rejected. That evening, I spoke to a divorce attorney named Ruben. He was professional, efficient, and non-judgmental. He explained that I had grounds for divorce based on infidelity, that the financial settlement would likely be straightforward since we had no children and had accumulated modest assets during our 5 years together, that the process would take approximately 3 to 4 months. Do you want to file contested or uncontested? Ruben asked. I thought about it. Part of me wanted to make this as difficult as possible for Vanessa, to make her understand the pain she had caused. But another part of me just wanted it to be over. Uncontested, I said. I just want a clean break. Before I could file for divorce, I needed to see Rudolph. Not to confront him. I wasn't interested in the melodrama of an angry husband confrontation. I needed to understand what he was, what kind of person could knowingly participate in someone's infidelity. I borrowed Caitlin's gray Honda Civic. The same model and color combination that existed on nearly every road in Sacramento, anonymous and forgettable. Vanessa never really paid attention to cars unless they stood out, and this one was designed specifically not to. I followed her to the restaurant on a Tuesday evening. She had told me she was working late. She had told me she was handling an important client presentation. In reality, she was going to the restaurant to meet with Rudolph in what I would later learn was his private office. The restaurant, the Golden Oak, was located in a renovated historic building in downtown Sacramento. It was upscale without being pretentious, the kind of place where people went when they wanted to feel sophisticated but not ostentatious. Vanessa went directly to the back entrance, and I watched as she disappeared inside. I waited in the car for 3 hours. During that time, I thought about all the times she had lied to me. All the times she had said she was somewhere else, doing something else, being with someone else. All the times I had believed her because I wanted to believe her, because I couldn't imagine that the person I had chosen to spend my life with would so casually destroy that choice. When she finally emerged, it was close to 11 at night. She didn't look triumphant or exhilarated. She looked tired, her hair slightly messed up, her lipstick faded. She looked like someone who had just finished a task rather than experienced something meaningful. I waited until she drove away, then I went into the restaurant. The man I spoke to was a waiter, probably in his mid-20s, with the kind of tired eyes that came from too many evening shifts. His name tag read Luke. "I'm looking for someone," I said, showing him a photo of Vanessa on my phone. "This woman. Have you seen her?" He looked at the photo and then at me with a certain wariness that made me realize he had seen many versions of this conversation play out before. "I don't want any trouble," he said. "I'm her husband," I explained. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I just need to know if you've seen her." He was still hesitant. I pulled out $100 bill and placed it on the counter between us. His expression changed. "Yeah, I've seen her," Luke said quietly. "She comes here. To see the boss, Mr. Barton. They go into his office. They're in there for hours at a time. I don't know what they do, but my guess is not the business kind of meeting, if you understand me." "How often?" I asked. "Couple times a month at least. Maybe more. I don't keep track. But everyone here knows about it. It's not exactly subtle. The boss treats her different than other people. Special service, you know? Taking her directly to the back." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because I don't respect people who cheat," Luke said simply. "I see it a lot in this business. People meeting up, people being unfaithful, people betraying people who trust them. I don't like it. I don't like being part of it. But if you don't cause problems with the boss or with your wife, if this stays between us, then I felt like telling you was the right thing to do." I promised him his confidence would be kept, and I meant it. Driving home that night, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't anger. Anger would come later. It was something colder, more precise. It was the beginning of acceptance. The acceptance that my marriage was over. The acceptance that I had been living a lie. The acceptance that the only thing left was to manage the dissolution with whatever grace I could muster. When Vanessa came home that night, I had made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her with accusations or evidence. I wasn't going to create a scene or demand explanations. I was simply going to ask her directly, and I was going to listen to how she answered. She walked through the door of the trailer with her jacket over one arm, her face already composing itself into the expression of normalcy she wore when coming home from her fabricated work emergency. "We need to talk," I said, and I watched as something flickered across her face. Not guilt exactly, but recognition that this moment, whatever it was, couldn't be entirely avoided. "About what?" she asked, though I could tell she already knew. "About whether you love me," I said. "I need you to answer truthfully. I don't want explanations or justifications. I just want the truth." She sat down on the small couch across from me. The trailer was so small that we were only a few feet apart, yet it felt like an enormous distance had opened between us. "No," she said finally. "Not anymore. Maybe I never did. I thought I did when we were planning to move here, but now, no. I don't love you." There was something almost peaceful about her honesty in that moment. It was worse than any lie could have been, because it was absolute and unredeemable. There was no possibility of misunderstanding or working through things. She had simply stopped loving me at some point, and I was left standing on the other side of an emotional gulf that couldn't be bridged. "Is there someone else?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Yes," she said. "But that's not why. The person doesn't matter. He's not important. It's just, I'm unhappy here. I'm unhappy in this trailer, unhappy in this city, unhappy with this life. I felt like I was dying here. I needed to feel something, anything that made me feel alive." "And you found that with him?" "No," she said. "I'm still not happy. But at least I felt something. That was enough for a while." I could have asked her many things at that moment. I could have asked her about the pregnancy. I could have asked her about her pattern of infidelity that had started with her first husband. I could have asked her why she thought it was acceptable to destroy someone's life to temporarily escape her own unhappiness. But I didn't ask any of those things. "I want a divorce," I said instead. "I'll make it as simple as possible. We can split everything 50-50. We don't need to fight about it. It will be cleaner that way." She looked surprised. Maybe she expected me to fight harder, to argue, to beg her to reconsider. But fighting would only extend the pain, and I had experienced enough pain to know that prolonging it served no one. "Okay," she said quietly. The next day, I met with Ruben and filed the preliminary divorce papers. I specified that we would seek an uncontested divorce with an equal division of assets. Vanessa signed without objection. But then something changed. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and click like if you enjoy this story. I always read your comments and analyze which stories you like best so that I can create better stories. Thank you, I will continue the story. About 2 weeks after the divorce papers had been filed, I received an unusual message. It was from Rudolph. On my personal phone. I didn't remember giving him my number, which meant Vanessa had provided it, which was its own revelation about how she talked about me in their private conversations. I know who you are, the message read. Vanessa's husband. She told me about the divorce. I think we should talk. I ignored it. But he sent another message a few hours later. I made a mistake with her. She's not what I thought. I was using her and she was using me. I'm sorry about all of this. I still didn't respond. But the conversation didn't stop there. Rudolph seemed desperate to communicate something, or perhaps to relieve himself of some guilt he was carrying. Then he did something unexpected. He contacted Vanessa directly and apparently he told her that their arrangement was over. That she should have stayed with me. That he had no interest in continuing any form of relationship with her. I never learned exactly what happened between them, but the result was catastrophic for Rudolph. Because Vanessa, faced with rejection from the man for whom she had destroyed her marriage, decided that if she couldn't have him, she would make him pay. She began leaving reviews on the restaurant's online profiles. Not just negative reviews, carefully crafted narratives about her interactions with him, vague but pointed references to his treatment of women, suggestions of manipulation and exploitation. She connected with other women who had had similar experiences with him, creating a network of accounts that all pointed to the same behavior. She called his business partners. She suggested they look more carefully at the allegations against their director. She made insinuations about his character that, while never crossing into outright defamation, painted a picture of someone whose judgment couldn't be trusted. Within a few months, the restaurant's business declined noticeably. Reservations dropped by 40%. Word spread through Sacramento's social circles that Rudolph Barton was someone to avoid, someone whose intentions were questionable, someone who couldn't be trusted with the reputations or emotions of others. I heard about this from various sources, people who knew me from the neighborhood who had heard about my divorce who had seen what was happening at the restaurant. I felt a strange mixture of emotions about it. Part of me was satisfied that Rudolph was experiencing consequences. But another part of me was disturbed that Vanessa was channeling her pain into destruction rather than healing. The restaurant was eventually sold to another owner, who managed it with more integrity and actually turned it around. But by that point, Rudolph had already lost the business that had defined his professional identity. He left Sacramento, moving east to some other city where his history wouldn't precede him. Vanessa, having accomplished this destruction, seemed to have no victory to celebrate. She had eliminated the man who had rejected her, but she had done it by becoming someone she probably despised. Someone willing to damage another person's reputation, someone willing to weaponize social media and networking to cause harm. She remained in the trailer for about a year after the final divorce settlement. I occasionally heard updates from neighbors, but I didn't seek them out. They said she had become isolated, that her friends had distanced themselves after learning the full story of the infidelity and the subsequent campaign against Rudolph. They said she seemed diminished somehow, like something essential had been removed from inside her. My divorce was finalized in May. The settlement was straightforward. We split the modest savings we had accumulated 50-50. We split our belongings with minimal argument. Vanessa kept the trailer temporarily, which seemed fair given that she had nowhere else to go immediately. I used my portion of the settlement to secure a small apartment closer to my workplace. The apartment was about 500 square feet, modest by most standards, but compared to the trailer it felt like a palace. It had real walls, proper insulation, actual separation between the bedroom and the living area. For the first time in years I felt like I could breathe. I reorganized my work situation. The shop where I had been working as an employee agreed to let me rent a small workspace and operate as an independent contractor. Within 6 months, I had established enough of a reputation and client base to consider starting my own small business. It wasn't rapid success, but it was progress in a direction I controlled. The business grew slowly but steadily. I took on apprentices, young people interested in the craft of painting cars, people who hadn't yet been corrupted by the shortcuts and dishonesty that plagued so much of the industry. I taught them about quality, about precision, about the satisfaction of work done right. I wasn't trying to build an empire or become wealthy. I was simply trying to build something authentic, something I could take genuine pride in. Every car that left my shop had been treated with the same care and attention that I would give to my own vehicle. One evening, about 3 years after the divorce was finalized, I received an unexpected visitor at my shop. It was Caitlin. She looked nervous, like she was uncertain whether she was welcome. I wanted to apologize, she said without preamble. I felt guilty for years about telling you what I saw at the restaurant. I felt like I was responsible for your divorce, responsible for everything that happened afterward. You're not responsible, I said. You just told me the truth. What happened after that was my choice and Vanessa's choices. You didn't cause any of it. But she's your wife, Caitlin said. I'm still friends with some of the people who know her and they say she's really struggling. She couldn't stay in Sacramento. She moved away. I feel like maybe I should have just kept quiet. If you had kept quiet, I said, I would still be living in that trailer, still married to someone who didn't love me, still investing my life into something that was already broken. You gave me the information I needed to make an informed decision. What I did with that information was my responsibility. What Vanessa did with the consequences was hers. You're not responsible for either of those things. Caitlin left feeling somewhat better, though I could tell she still carried some weight of guilt. Guilt is a strange thing. It often attaches itself to people who don't deserve to carry it, while those who do deserve it manage to shake it off entirely. I never heard from Vanessa directly after the divorce was final. I heard secondhand reports over the years. She had moved to Los Angeles for a while, then to San Francisco. She had changed jobs several times. She had seemed to struggle with establishing any kind of stable life. But these were just stories filtered through multiple tellings, probably not entirely accurate. In a way, I felt sorry for her. Not because I thought she didn't deserve the consequences of her actions. I absolutely believed she did. But because I recognized that her capacity for infidelity, her inability to be satisfied with what she had, her constant need to escape her circumstances rather than address them, meant that she was probably suffering in ways that had nothing to do with what I or Rudolph or anyone else had done to her. She was suffering because of something within herself that she hadn't figured out how to address. 5 years have passed since the divorce was finalized. The auto painting business has grown into something I'm genuinely proud of. I've expanded the workspace, hired 3 full-time employees, and established a reputation for quality and reliability. We paint everything from standard vehicles to rare classics that require the kind of meticulous attention that most shops don't have the patience to provide. I bought my own apartment building. Nothing fancy, just a modest multi-unit complex that provides income and stability. I live in one unit and rent out the others. It's a far cry from the dreams Vanessa had of becoming wealthy and successful, but it's genuine success, built on honest work and real value provided to real people. I've learned a lot about myself during these years. I learned that betrayal, while painful in the moment, doesn't have to define your future. That the person who wrongs you has already made their decision about who they are, you only get to decide who you will become in response. I learned that revenge, in its purest form, isn't about harming the person who hurt you. It's about building something better than what they tried to destroy. It's about becoming someone so anchored in integrity that their betrayal becomes irrelevant to your narrative. I learned that love and trust, while they can be broken, can also be rebuilt, not necessarily with the person who broke them but with yourself. I learned to trust myself to make good decisions, to identify dishonesty, to understand when someone is simply not capable of being honest with me. I met someone new about 3 years after the divorce. Her name is Rebecca. She's a teacher, patient, thoughtful, honest in a way that seemed rare until I realized that honesty isn't actually rare. It's just that when you've experienced profound dishonesty, the simple fact of someone being straightforward feels like a gift. We don't live together. We're taking things slowly, without the urgency that colored my relationship with Vanessa. We go to dinner. We take weekend trips. We talk about our lives, our thoughts, our fears. It's not dramatic or intense. It's just genuine connection, and after everything I experienced, genuine connection feels like the greatest luxury. Do I still think about Vanessa sometimes? Yes. But not with anger or bitterness anymore. I think about her the way you might think about someone you knew in a previous life, with a certain distant curiosity about how they ended up where they are, but without any investment in their current circumstances. The trailer where we lived together was eventually torn down. Ruben, the owner, decided to develop the land into something more profitable. I drove by a few years ago and saw a small commercial building in its place. There was no trace of the trailer, no reminder of those 5 years of cramped spaces and careful avoidance of eye contact. Sometimes I wonder if that's what happened to Vanessa. If she simply moved on, eventually living a life where her past infidelities became irrelevant, where she met someone who either didn't know about her history or didn't care. It's possible. People are resilient in ways we don't often acknowledge. They recover from disasters. They rebuild. They move forward. What I know with certainty is that I moved forward. I built a life that I could take genuine pride in. I created something authentic and real and lasting. The marriage was broken, but I didn't allow myself to become broken along with it. The truth is that betrayal says nothing about the worth of the person betrayed. It says everything about the character of the person who commits it. And once you understand that simple fact, you're free to decide who you will become regardless of what others have chosen to do. I wake up in my apartment, a space that is entirely mine, in a business that is built on my skills and my integrity. I open the shop, and I work with people who respect my expertise and my commitment to quality. At the end of the day, I look at the cars we've painted, at the work we've done, at the value we've created. And I realize that revenge isn't about what you do to someone else. Revenge, real revenge, is about what you do for yourself. It's about becoming so content with your own life, so fulfilled by your own accomplishments, that the person who hurt you becomes utterly irrelevant to your narrative. That's the victory that lasts. Not the destruction of someone else's reputation or life. Not the satisfaction of seeing them suffer. But the genuine, lasting satisfaction of knowing that you chose to build rather than destroy, to create rather than damage, to move forward rather than remain stuck in the past. Thank you for watching this video. YouTube may no longer suggest my channel to you, so subscribe to it to receive new interesting stories. You will also help the channel grow and improve the quality of its content. The screen now displays a playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to. You can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.